Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unlock Your Blocks with Elyssa. I am Elyssa Smith, and I'm really excited to bring on my guest today. She's one of my favorite people, no joke, in the entire world. She is my director of operations, but she also is a badass boss babe in her own right. And I feel like I kind of second guess, how did I end up with someone so good? Like every day that I work with her. So I want to introduce you to my good friend, Melissa Gamara. She's been working as an operations executive since 2018, helping multi-million dollar businesses streamline their back end and build amazing teams to support company growth. Through her strategic planning, process creation, and people leading skills, which by the way, she's a superhero at if you're looking for some sort of a fractional director of ops for your business, highly, highly recommend. She's been able to double revenue for her companies that she works with, help them operate more smoothly, and the owners have gotten back their free time. I can attest to this personally. So she has incredible certifications that back her up in all these areas. And I have had the unique pleasure of getting to know her over the last 15 to 18 months. And learning about her business experience has been one of the most illuminating things that has helped my business to get where it is. Even if you don't have a business and you're listening today and you're like, okay, well, what's in this for me? Because let's be honest, that's what we're thinking about when we're listening to a podcast. I want you to hear Melissa's journey through recognizing how self-sabotage has played a role in building her business and how she sees it playing a role in the companies that she's helping. And Melissa, I just want you to know I'm fully okay if you want to out me on some of this because I know that I sabotage with the best of them. Thank you so much for coming on today, and I cannot wait to dive into this juicy chat.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about all the fun and terrible things that I have done to myself, both in my business and personally, and just some of the things that I see more commonly in some of these business owners and just high achieving women.
I think it ends up being very similar for a lot of us, right? Is that what you've seen as a director of ops for the multiple companies you've worked for, that we end up as high achievers kind of sabotaging ourselves in the same way?
Yeah, it is really funny because every single business owner that I work with is different in their own way, but they all have kind of this underlying similarity that is really, really interesting to watch from behind the scenes, right? And I see this happening all the time. One of the biggest self-sabotages that I see almost every single high achiever, business owner, kind of visionary person, somebody who has a lot of ideas, is actually the fact that they have a lot of ideas. They want to do a lot of things. And I notice this with high achievers, especially, like we want to do all the things. I don't know about you, but I look at stuff sometimes and I'm like, oh my gosh, it would be so cool if I could learn Spanish, right? My husband is Hispanic. I speak, very little Spanish, enough to just get myself in trouble. But there's all these things that as high achievers, they were like, ooh, that sounds really fun. I would love to learn how to go snorkeling. I want to go, go rock climbing. I'm going to pick up this new hobby. I want to do all these new things. And a lot of times what ends up happening is we end up with all these like half done hobbies or like things that are just like, I bought a sewing machine because I wanted to learn how to like sew my own clothes. And now there's all this like sunk cost and time and energy and money. And you end up with this like hobby graveyard, or in business owners' cases, you end up with this like ideas graveyard, things that are like half done. And I see this all the time where these are distractions, right? And that's not to say that you can't pick up a new hobby or pivot your business, but really looking at and having somebody come in and say, is this really the thing that we need to be focused on? Is this actually in service of a higher goal? What is that goal? Does this actually help us get there? And really taking a look at that. That's a lot of times the function that I serve. And I would say that most often when I work with these high achieving women, that is the biggest self-sabotage that I see kind of throughout, no matter who the person is, no matter what their personality type is. It's just constantly getting distracted by these like bright, shiny objects, this new thing that we could be doing. And ultimately, it is a form of self-sabotage where you want to do all the things and we just don't have the time, energy, and resources to do it. And it takes you away from the bigger goal, which ultimately ends up being a form of self-sabotage if you really look at it.
That makes total sense. The way that we operate as high achievers is we're can-do girls, right? And so I think that makes total sense that a can-do girl is going to be like, and this and this and this. And we also, I mean, I'm telling on myself a little bit here. Sometimes we don't have the best indicator of our own, the limits to our capacity. I have one client right now where we're working on her understanding that when your body wants to shut down, you should stop working. But it's really hard to know that when you're a high achiever. So I think it's interesting that that's consistently what you see, especially because the people that are hiring you are the visionaries, right? It's like the people who are, their passion project is what they're hiring you into. So you're like, whoa, Bessie, like I'm holding reins, like hang on, get it, don't giddy up right now. We need to slow it down. So that's fascinating. Have you ever dealt with that yourself, would you say?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I've had this thought to myself a couple of different times where I'm like, if I could clone myself and live multiple different lifetimes, I would totally do that in a heartbeat, because I feel like there's so many things. There's like a piece of me that's like, I want to go like live like a nomad and backpack across the world and do all these fun, amazing things. But then, I'm a mom with children, so like obviously can't do that, at least not right now in this current lifetime, and probably won't ever do that if I'm being totally honest. But there's a piece of me that feels like there's never enough time in the day to do all the things that I do, or that I want to do rather. And I constantly run into this problem where I feel like the list of things that either needs to get done or that I want to have done just continues to get longer and longer and longer. And it never actually seems like it's getting shorter. And I'm sure everybody feels like that in some way, shape, or form, where they're looking at all the things that they have to get done. And they're like, I know all these things need to get done, and I also want to get all of these things done. And it's also 7 p.m. And I think, when I look at kind of the grand scheme of things and how all of these different self-sabotaging things that we do that I see in my daily life, but also that I see in other people's daily lives, how they all come together. So for example, in this scenario where you have this big, long laundry list of things that you're like, oh, some of these things are a want to do, some of these things are a need to do, and this list just keeps getting longer, and I have all this bright, shiny object syndrome, and I'm constantly getting, pulled into other things. This is where we start to see things like revenge bedtime, right? Where you feel like, oh, there's just not enough time in the day. I didn't have enough time to do the things that I wanted to do because I was so busy doing all the things on the list that needed to get done, that then I didn't have a chance to do all the things that I wanted to do, or vice versa, right? And you start to see people stay up until 11, 12, 1, 2. And I see this with entrepreneurs literally all the time, where they're getting like 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep at best sometimes. And this is a big problem. Or worse, even in my opinion, is they're working all weekend long. They're literally never giving themselves breaks, and they're either waking up super early in the morning because somebody told them that was how they get more hours in the day. They're just eating into this wherever they can because they just can't get a hold of this list of things that they want to do. And listen, I'm this person. I'm calling myself. And I have to catch myself. I have to be so strict about some of the things that I'm a rule follower. I don't know if anybody else is like that good girl.
I'm sure there's no one else here that knows what that's like.
I definitely wasn't that person when I was a teenager, obviously. But now as an adult, I have to like give myself a bedtime, and it has to be like a hard line in the sand where I say, nope, this is what we're doing. And it's almost like the adult has to be in the room, and I have to put my adulting hat on to tell this person who wants to get all the things done and who wants to like stay up really late and work on a passion project, or, work on my
movies.
Let's watch a movie. I just finished Severance, and there was a piece of me that wanted to watch Severance for like 7 hours a day and just get to like, we have these pieces of ourselves that turn into self-sabotage in all these other ways. So yes, there's the self-sabotage that I see a lot of, wanting to do all the things and constantly getting pulled in a million different directions. But that actually spirals into lots of other types of self-sabotage, like revenge bedtime, is just one of the main ones I can think of. But procrastination even, which is such a weird one to think about when you have a really long list. But I see this as well, where I will give business owners like, hey, I need this amount of stuff from you and I need it on this date. And they will procrastinate and they will not do it. And it is really hard. And I end up having to get on a Zoom call with them and say, okay, I'm the Zoom fairy and I'm here to hold your hand while we do this thing because I need you to get it done so I can do this other thing. And it's this like paralysis that happens when there's all this stuff to do on the list. So those are just some of the things that I see on a regular basis with especially high achieving women, business owners, and the like.
Yeah. And I think, so I had a client this week and we were talking a lot about this concept of the overwhelm that can happen when you have just such a long list of things to do. And so she was saying, because part of what I do with my one-to-one clients is like, I kind of like poke the things that hurt a little bit just to kind of see what's causing them. And so I was like, so tell me about this thing that we said you were maybe going to do by this call and you haven't been able to yet. I said, tell me what feels hard about that. What resistance do you feel in your body about it? And she said, gosh, I haven't really thought about it. And so I just kind of said, let's take a minute right now, take a deep breath, and I walk my clients through this like nervous system regulation, right? Because they have to, your system literally will not allow you to see what's wrong unless you can tell it that it's safe to do so. So that's kind of what we did. And she was able to identify, okay, it's because I feel like I need to go all in or nothing. She said, I want to be like 250%. I know I can get it done. I can do it above and beyond, or I don't want to start it. And I'm like, yes, it's the overachiever's dilemma. And then she ended up also dealing with decision fatigue. I think a lot of high achieving women, we have so many decisions we have to make anyway. And it's proven right now. People have been studying the role of the woman in the household. And if there's more than just you living there, even if it's just you living there, you're still carrying the weight of the entire household and all the decisions that need to be made. You're doing the adulting thing. And then if there are other people also inside your household, you have their loads to carry. So we're the glue of this whole dang society. There's a few things we're thinking about. And then if you also have a business or if you're scaling, you're growing your career or whatever it is that you're doing, there's just a lot of decisions to be made. And she was talking about how she realized that she didn't know how to make the first decision for the first baby step in order to make it less overwhelming. So this decision fatigue, the overwhelm, the all or nothing mentality, these are all little saboteurs that kind of can come in and attack. So I think it's really interesting that that's what you're seeing across the board. Now, so can you tell us a little bit about how your business journey has gone, whatever you want to share? I know a lot about your business journey, but for the listener who's listening today, maybe she doesn't have her own business even, but she's wondering, like, I think it would be really helpful for everyone that's listening to hear, how did you decide? I mean, you started a business really young and you've been in business for a really long time, even though you're a lot younger than me and a lot younger than a lot of the people you work with, but you come across as such, I hate the term old soul because I feel it's like it can be like, oh, you're just an old soul. But I mean, you are just an incredible business person that I think that what you've accomplished in a short amount of time is really wonderful. So what do you feel comfortable sharing about how your business journey started and where you might have come up against whatever saboteurs, stopped you from playing bigger?
Yeah. That's such a good question because, funny enough, last night my husband and I were reflecting on my business journey. I've been in business for going on 8 years, which is really wild to think about. Or I'm sorry, going on 7 years. So is that correct? I don't know. It's been a long time. I lost track.
7 or 8 years. Yeah, no, that's good.
So it's really funny because I was looking at how did I make this work? Because I look back on the circumstances. So I'll give a little bit of backstory. So I started my business while I was still working a corporate job in finance. So I managed contractors in the legal department for a business loan company and was going to school to get my accounting degree and was pregnant with my daughter.
So you weren't doing very much at the time. Is that what I'm understanding? There wasn't a lot going on in your life.
Living super casually as I do.
Which I even forgot that you have an accounting degree. I completely forgot that that's your background. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah. Which, I thought I was going to be an accountant. And it does serve its purpose in what I do now. But it is really funny how life just throws you curveballs like that. Where
you think you know what you're doing. Yeah. And then life has other plans.
I was going to be a doctor, which I laugh hysterically about nowadays. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never. But so at the time, I had entered my third trimester and we had started looking at daycare. And I'm in Utah, and again, this was back in 2018. And I remember looking at daycare costs, and they were crazy, so expensive for full-time daycare for a newborn. Which I understand why daycare costs as much as it does. However, it hurts my soul that a lot of times the daycare people, the people who are actually taking care of your kids are like not actually seeing the bulk of that money. But obviously I know that now. When I started looking at our finances and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to go back to work. I literally don't know how I'm going to be able to afford it. And I also can't quit my job because we also don't have the money for that. And so I started looking into just admin and like virtual bookkeeping because obviously accounting degree. And so I found the world of this like virtual assisting, which was kind of back then an umbrella term for somebody who does admin, bookkeeping, and just kind of operations in general. And I basically was like, well, my back is up against the wall and I have no other options. So we're going to white knuckle this and just make it work. Sheer like gumption and willpower at that point in time. And
Oh
just
my gosh.
like, I have literally no other option. And so I feel like there's a piece of that where I look back on it and I'm like, that was like that fight or flight piece of me that was fueling that for probably the first year of like building a business. And I think a lot of times it's really funny because when I was talking with my husband about this last night, that's almost necessary to like building a successful business. Not to say that like every single person has to build it in this way, but I do think that there is something really powerful in having your back against the wall and being like in a tough place where that fight or flight piece of you comes in handy, right? But then at some point in time, it doesn't know how to turn off.
Yes. And I think that's true. Just, I want to insert this too. It's true for any hard goal,
Yeah.
right? It's true for any hard goal. Anything that I have accomplished that has been worth accomplishing, that moved me to the next level of what I wanted to become, has been a little bit motivated by, hey, it's do or die time. And that's just the nature of life. But I love this distinction that you're drawing because we're not meant to stay in that kind of survival mode. It can be very effective, right? Just like it was designed to be in cavewoman days. You're going to run from the saber-toothed cat with your child because you don't want it to eat your child. So like you're going to find a new gear, you find a new speed that you can run because of what's chasing you. But then, it's not okay to stay in that place. So please continue. I love that.
Yeah. So after several years of basically just going, for lack of a better term, like balls to the wall, like just completely redlining it, I got to a place shortly after COVID, actually, where I was beyond burned out. My boundaries were gone. I did not care for the job I was doing anymore. Like I just was so burned out. My husband and I were fighting about how much I was working. I was overworked. It was a situation where I just really could not figure out what the problem was. And right around like Christmas time, and I think it was probably in 2020, right around Christmas time, I lost 2 out of 3 clients for situations that were not in my control. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the bulk of my client base right now is gone, which to some people, like 3 clients probably doesn't sound like a lot, but I was working, probably 50 hours a week at that point in time. It was quite a bit. And so when the bulk of my like livelihood was basically falling off the side of a cliff, I got to a place where I was like, this isn't it. I'm done. Like I was so far into burnout that I couldn't see the goal anymore. I didn't understand the why. I was like, I'm done. I'm done with all of this. And I began the process of burning down my business. And that was a really tough period of time. And again, in talking with my husband a little bit about just kind of the business journey and just what I've gone through, we look back on that now as like, yeah, that was really, really tough, but it actually led to a lot of really great things. So I burned everything to the ground. I literally like closed my business like with the state, like just went full bore, took a full-time job, like still doing operations, mind you, because at the heart of it, I do love this job and this is what I'm meant to do. And I would do it even if nobody paid me or if they paid me like half of what I was making, which is exactly what I did. And I went and I worked full time for a singular person for like a year. And what was really funny about that? My boundaries were still crap. And so I was still overworking myself and my husband and I were still fighting. And now we were also strapped for cash because I had taken like a massive pay cut. And during this time was really like when they talk about how the pressure on the coal is like the thing that creates the diamond, this was like peak level, I'm under pressure at this point in time. And I was like, man, I really thought that this was the solution to all of these like self-sabotaging things that I'm doing. I thought this was the answer, that like, it was because I'm a bad business person and that's why I'm doing this to myself, right? So I should go work for somebody else because they're going to fix this problem for me. When in reality, the problem was me. I didn't have clear enough boundaries and I just was not taking care of myself and not happy with where I was at that point in time. And I let the business just turn into this monster that was like completely taking over my life. And so after a little while of working full time, I decided, okay, we're gonna go back to like working for ourselves, and we're gonna be better about our boundaries, and like, what are our boundaries and how are we gonna do this in a better way? And I went through the process of learning about EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. They are like rule people. They are like the most type A that you could possibly be, which really spoke to me. And so
They were singing the language of your people, or singing the song of your people.
Song of my people right here. I love it so much. So I went through that process of understanding how they do things and how I could fully step into what is now called the integrator role. So this is obviously director of operations. There's like a million and one terms, but EOS specifically has coined the term integrator and visionary, right? And they talk a lot about how these two are kind of yin and yang to each other. So I fully stepped into this role of integrator and kind of, used their principles, used all the things, all the rules that they have to help guide me through reestablishing my boundaries. So after I went through this process of really understanding how to set boundaries for myself and how to make sure that I'm starting these relationships with my clients off on this correct foot, and also I put a lot of like tech and kind of tools in place to save me from myself, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit.
To save you from yourself. That's fantastic.
I'm literally my own worst enemy. And I find that most people are, which is like the funniest thing ever. But, I learned kind of all these different things, and I recommitted myself to what is my why. And the reason why I started my business was so I could have my children and I could be a mom and I could take care of them and be present and do all these things and have that flexibility to put my mom hat on when my kids are sick, and also like be able to serve my clients. And so when I came back to that and I really decided like, okay, I really want to be in service of others and I want to be able to be a great mom to my children. And the only way that I can do that is by restarting my business, having these really clear boundaries. And I had to start my business from the ground, basically, all over again. And it took a long time. And I am not proud to say that I thought it was going to be, I'll just like bounce back. I'll like reach out to all my past contacts. But like, it's not that simple. After a year of being out of business and telling people like, nope, I don't do this anymore, like things dry up. And so I always think it's funny.
You burned the boats. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Burn the whole thing. It's gone. It's in ashes. And when I talk to business owners, sometimes they get to these places, right? Where they're like, I'm just going to burn the whole thing to the ground. And I'm like, you say that now, but let me walk you through what that actually looks like.
Let me let you learn from my history.
Yes. Because you think it's going to fix the problem, but like it's not. The problem is deeper than that. The business is not the problem. It's you, unfortunately.
I love that we have you here to like tell us this. I mean, this is the thing. You've had this conversation with me before, just about a lot of different things. It's like, okay, actually, there is a way to exist in this particular difficult transition of the business as the best version of yourself, and let's find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so rebuilt my business. It's been a couple of years since then. It's so much healthier now. I am so much healthier now. And my boundaries are tight. They are strong. And I tell you that if it hadn't been for me burning my entire business to the ground and like having to rebuild it and realizing that, this like total external thing that I thought was the problem is actually not the problem. And instead the problem is internal. I think that's a really hard thing for a lot of us to acknowledge and accept and come to terms with, because I can't possibly be the problem. I do amazing things all the time. People constantly tell me that I'm like crushing it and they don't know how I'm doing all the things I'm doing. I can't possibly be the problem. But you are the problem. because all of that like positive reinforcement around getting shiz done is coming to a head in the form of burnout. And the thing that you're doing that's burning you out is like a habit that you've built over time. And again, it's that high achiever mentality of I'm going to continue to do this thing because that's where the reward is and that's where the positive affirmation is. So I'm going to continue doing that even though it's at a detriment to myself. And yeah, it's a sneaky little bug and you don't realize that it's happening until you take away the thing that you think is the problem and the problem still exists and you have to go, oops, there's some bigger things that I have to take part of here and really look at and work through. And that's not fun. Burning down your business is actually quite fun. You're like, it's so free. You're like this, I'm getting rid of, it's like spring cleaning.
It's all done.
Rid of it, the problem's going away, and then you realize that, oh, actually I really loved that thing. I basically just like I killed my baby, metaphorically speaking, and unfortunately the problem persists. And so it's just would not recommend. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Something else you can fix first.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I so relate to all of that. I'm like, oops, the problem might actually just be the way that and you know, what's funny is that I think those of us who are really high achievers, I mean, just speaking from experience, like I went my whole life being like, I'm the good one. Like I'm the one that, you know, secretly in the back of my self-esteem was on the floor. Like it was bad self-esteem. But this part of me that was trying to keep me alive was like, you're the best at this. And if you can't be the best, then you should quit. And this is where and it's this inner child part, right? This wounded part that learned that in order to get what you need to be the person that gets the most recognition. You need to be the person that is having the easiest time of things. Like you should be better at this is constantly our mantra that's like inside. You should be better at this. And if you're having a hard time, it's probably your fault. And the thing is that comes from it's embedded in our psychology at a young age, ages 0 to 10, you are designed to assume that anything that is wrong is your fault. Because if it's your caregiver's fault, we can't continue to thrive or exist in a world where we can't get our needs met. So the brain just does this thing where it's like, oh, well, if you could just be better, work harder, do more, then you'll get your needs met. And so that translates into grown women who are like, I cannot set a boundary because that would require, like, I need to keep sacrificing myself. I need to work harder, be better, and do more. And then I'll have more success. And then I'll have the thing I'm craving. And then I'll have the reward that I need. And when it doesn't come, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't face the fact that I'm a failure, but I also can't face the fact that I need to change how I'm responding to things. And I think also something that you said too is like, it's not because we're doing something wrong per se that there's something wrong. Like the problem is within us. The problem is internal because we never learned how to stand up for what we actually needed. We never learned that it's okay to fail at something as long as you're learning and failing forward and kind of moving to that. And our definition of failure is skewed too. You know, not making the 6 figures or the $1 million, not having the highest paid job, not having the degree that you thought you were supposed to have, not having the family life that you thought you were supposed to have or that you signed up for. There are so many things that life throws at us where we deem it as a failure on our part. And then the only way we know how to deal with that is to work harder, be better, and do more. And that's where we get burned out. That's where we start to really succumb to the self-sabotage. So I love that. It's really a full circle thing looking at, you know what, maybe it's not that you're bad. It's like, yes, the problem is within you, but maybe it's that you're not valuing yourself highly enough. You're not valuing your sanity, your serenity, your peace, your time highly enough to stand up for them. And that's really what we have to do. And I keep thinking this is my original why. It's what if there's a whole set of women out there, multiple generations of women across this global community who could decide that we are worth standing up for what we need, who are worth and who are deserving of having our time, energy, and resources valued at the level that they need to be valued. So much so that we don't accept unacceptable behavior from other people or bad clients or a bad boss or bad relationships or bad friends. And we don't keep blaming ourselves for the things that feel bad, but we keep looking at actually, what could I stand up for myself about right now that would help this feel better? So I have a question. What would you say for someone who's listening today? Maybe she's sitting here thinking, I think I might be burning out, or I want to burn everything down. Maybe it's her job, her business, her relationships. What is the very next thing that you would advise her to do? What is the first step in the right direction for her today?
Yes. I There's a couple of things, right? So first and foremost, I think it's always a good idea. I'm like a write it down kind of person. If you're feeling, I'm burned out, I'm working too many hours, blah, 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 blah. You're telling yourself all these stories. Take a look at that and just pen to paper, what's happening right now that drains me? Like walk through the day. What are the things that I'm doing right now that are draining me? And right now it might feel like everything is draining, but try to be critical.
All the things. Just write down all the things.
All the things. Try to be objective and really look at like, okay, when am I feeling the most drained? Like, do I actually enjoy what I'm doing? Or am I, feeling resistance to this because I actually really hate my job, right? Because if that's the case, then that's a big thing that you have to really start to wrestle with and identify, okay, if I change jobs, is that actually going to make me happier? This is something that I used to do a ton before I started working for myself. I literally used to job hop all the time because I'm not cut out to work for another person. I've just learned that. I learned that through burning my business down. So really take the time to ask yourself, like, if I get rid of this factor, will that make me feel better? Because if you're working on the weekends, it's pretty easy to say like, yeah, I probably would feel better if I would stop working after 6 o'clock at night. And I gave myself, 2 days of rest to actually like get back into, normalcy and become a regular person again, and then get back into work. So I like to start by just kind of writing things down. This is Dan Martell is one of my favorite book like authors, coaches. You know that because obviously like I've sent you his books and things like that.
Yes.
He has an exercise that he does specifically for delegating that I think is really good for this as well. When you're thinking about what makes you really happy versus what maybe doesn't light you up, and just feel free to like color code that. Green is good, red is bad. Like make it fun for yourself and just write all that stuff down. And then when you think about, okay, maybe you are working into the evenings, you're working on the weekends, you're having a hard time unplugging at night, you're doing revenge bedtime. And so then you wake up super tired in the morning. When you look at some of these things and you start to think about, okay, I know that this is not in service of the person that I want to be. Now we have to think about how are we going to fix that? And I'm a big fan of routines and like putting things in a calendar. And, I really like using tech to help me kind of stay in my lane, if you will. So I'm a big fan of putting time blocks on my calendar and saying, okay, once this time block ends for like this particular activity, I'm moving on to the next thing. And I'm giving myself permission right now that it doesn't matter where I'm leaving off on this thing. Once this time hits, I have agreed and I've made a commitment to myself that I'm moving on to the next thing. And I do this with my phone as well. I set up like blocks of time where I have do not disturb on for work notifications. So I have work notifications that are allowed during this chunk of time. And as soon as 6 o'clock hits, my phone does not receive any work notifications. And I silence specific apps that are on my phone. I silence certain people, even like text messages.
Talk about boundaries, mic drop.
I have set it up so that I don't receive text messages from people. And if they need me, if it's something super urgent, they will call me and I will receive that, right? So these are just some things that I've put in place in my life to help me say, oop, okay, here's the boundary. There's a physical reminder that there's a boundary there. And that to me is just like a quick gut check. Now, for somebody who's like real deep into self-sabotage, these things might not work. There might be some additional things that need to be unpacked there. But for me, this is what works, right? Is looking at what exactly is causing me to feel badly and how do I want to fix that? Like what needs to change? And then putting physical boundaries in place to prevent me from self-sabotaging. Like I literally turn my phone on Do Not Disturb and it has a notification. Hey, it's bedtime. I get notifications on my phone that tell me to go to bed like I'm a child.
I do too, actually. It's really helpful. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do what mom says.
Yes, exactly. And that might sound so silly, but having those physical reminders, I do think is helpful to keep you on track and also like take the thought process out of it. Coming back to decision fatigue that you mentioned earlier, I think a lot of us have so much decision fatigue that deciding that we're going to be done with something in the moment feels really hard, which is why putting those physical boundaries in place where you kind of start your day off as, oh, okay, here's the boundaries that I'm setting on my calendar today. I have boundaries set up on my phone to help prevent me from doing other things. I have notifications that, okay, I've agreed that this is when I'm going to go to bed. And I think that's like a hack for high achievers, is that we want to like do the thing that's on our calendar. We want to obey the rules, if you will. And it works for me. It's like a trick for my brain. It's like, oh, yep, I can't. Yeah.
Gotta follow the
Unfortunately,
rules.
I didn't get your text message because, it was after business hours. I have it on Do Not Disturb. Next time, if it's an emergency, you can give me a call, right? And there's something about calling somebody that is like, ooh, is it actually urgent enough that I have to call them?
Right. Yes.
And they don't. To this day, I think I've only had one time where somebody has actually called me because it's been a true emergency, and it comes through just fine. So these are things that, again, they work for me and they may not work for some people, but I do think that it's kind of a little bit of a brain hack, if you will, to just set these things up where you protect yourself from yourself.
Well said. I couldn't say it any better. That's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to close us out with, thank you so much, by the way, Melissa. This is invaluable. Like, you're giving all of your integrator hacks to everyone for free right now, and I love that. So I like to ask my guests what their go-to pump-up song is, because the way that we experience music, especially if you get a little dance party in, is that it interrupts a pattern of survival mode. So we can get out of survival mode pretty quickly with using the 3 deep breaths that I talk about, but also you can do it with a little song. So what is your go-to song? Do you have one right now, or do you have a couple that you like?
Yeah, so there's one song in particular where if I'm just like down in the dumps, things are not going the way I want them to, I'm feeling really like down on my luck, I really love the song The Show Goes On by Lupe Fiasco. And it talks about overcoming adversity, right? It's a super like high vibe song, but it talks about all these different ways that people are overcoming adversity. And it's like, well, the show must go on. Like, it just is like, pick yourself up and let's keep going. We can do this. And I think it's such a great song to pull anybody out of a funk. That's my personal favorite.
Awesome. I haven't heard it. I'm going to listen. And then my final question for you before we wrap is, what is your go-to self-care, self-nurturing act if you just have a few minutes? Because we are busy ladies, and I love talking about all of our ideas for how we take care of ourselves in a short period of time.
Yeah. So as of right now, it's starting to warm up here in Utah, which is where I'm at. And we have this beautiful front porch that has like rocking chairs on it. And I swear to you, it's funny that we talk about like me being an old soul, because I'm like, I am like that. I will be the old person sitting on my porch in a rocking chair when I'm like 80, because I enjoy being outside so much when it's nice and warm and the sun is shining. I can't do that so much in the winter. So in the wintertime, typically I'll try to go and, just sit upstairs. I'm in my basement in my office. But if I just need that little bit of sunshine, I'll go upstairs, and just anything that's like warm and sunny, like that's always going to get me out of whatever it is that is going on. So whether that's sitting on my front porch or having a nice like warm beverage, if it's like a cloudy day, anything like that where it's just going to kind of like warm your soul is a good go-to for me.
Hits 4 out of 5 senses. So it's really, really effective for helping us get out of survival mode. So I love that that's one that you're using. I've been drinking my tea throughout this interview, and it's my go-to as well if I just have a few minutes. So I love that. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing everything. And for everyone listening, if you are struggling, like if you're listening to Melissa's list of things to do and you're like, those are such good ideas, and then you walk away from this podcast and you can't force yourself to do them, there's probably a trauma related root in there, and it's so sneaky you might not even see it. So I'd love to help you discover what's stopping you from doing what you know to do in a free 15-minute Unlock Your Blocks call. I hope to see you here next time. We will be talking about more good stuff for getting out of survival mode. Take such good care of you.